I used that same kind of shame and guilt to try to drive me to lose the weight. And I had weight loss goals. I had accountability partners. I had nutrition plans. I had workout plans. And they would all work for me for about 30 days. And then it would slowly start slipping away.
Leading voices from the fringe, especially women and people of color. This season, we're all about sharing the stories and practices that will lead us all toward wholeness in our body, soul, and spirit. If you find yourself on the fringe of culture, our hope is that this podcast will help you feel like you belong and that your voice is needed in this world. It is time to live and lead with wholeness. So one of the things that we are talking a lot about this year at Azar & Co. is how do we take care of our bodies? How do we honor and live into our physical beings in a way that increases capacity, that honors how we have been created, that doesn't use and abuse these bodies that we've been given. And so when I was thinking about this series of conversations around our body, the first person to pop into my brain that I wanted to have a conversation with is my friend Marc Payan. Marc and I met 1,000 years ago, but we're not that old. I don't know. We met probably 10 plus years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's about right. About 10 years ago.
and
we're just
what you say. You can introduce us.
Yeah, and we just keep getting younger.
Totally. It's a weird thing about the world. And when you take care of your bodies, actually weird things do happen. So Marc is rad. He's married. He's got 3 kids. He has like a real day job, but then he is also a coach and has started an incredible movement in Orange County of people that are taking care of their bodies, learning how to increase that capacity. And Marc, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this one, but I have a bias that particularly in faith communities, we've done a really bad job helping people make a connection to our body's wholeness and our spirituality. What do you think?
I think we could definitely do a better job in those circles to address the whole person. Yes.
That seems like a more positive way to say it. I'm like, we suck at this and let's do it better. But there's a disintegration a lot of times between caring for your body and caring for your soul, or, loving God and honoring your body. And so I want to have a conversation around how to integrate those things better, and not from a place of perfectionism or like, how do you become like Sports Illustrated's next swimsuit model? I know there's a lot of things that people cannot control that happens to our bodies. So I'm not talking about things that we're not responsible for or things that are outside of our control. I want to focus in our conversation about how we can be responsible, taking control of the things that we can take control of. So I wanted to start by asking you, how do you define responsibility, particularly when it comes to our bodies?
Well, responsibility, I mean, that's a pretty heavy word. I think, first of all, it's having a clear awareness of who you are, or just an awareness of who you are. And from there, responsibility is just responding to who you are. And sometimes who we need to be or who we are is different in every different situation. So it is our responsibility to step up and be who we are, who we're called to be. And that's an every moment thing. That's an everyday thing. Is we get the opportunity each time to be responsible, to step up to who we are. So that includes, what's been put in our sphere, in our hands. And so each and every moment, we're called to stand up. And that's how I kind of view responsibility.
Yeah, before we hit record, we were talking about a mutual friend of ours, Hendrik Kotze. And he has trained both of us in coaching. We've spent a lot of time with him, love him. he will be on the podcast at some point in the future. But one of the ways that I love that Hendra talks about responsibility is responding within our abilities. And so there's some things that are outside of our ability, whether it's circumstantial, whether it is like actual, like real restrictions. Sometimes there's disabilities involved. Sometimes there's, life circumstances. But we have a lot of abilities that we often don't respond to, that we don't take responsibility for. But I think that how you described that, who you are, knowing who you are, is a pretty critical first step, especially for a leader, to know who it is that they are.
Yeah, no, that's clear, because sometimes we're trying to respond to kind of put it the way that Hendra defined it is we can fall in the trap of trying to respond with other people's abilities or what we think the role that we're in, how that role should respond, and we lose sight of who we are, and we don't hone in our own abilities. I love the way he put it.
Yeah. So also, I want to define what physical wellness looks like. If we are to be whole in our bodies, mind, and spirit, if that's who we've been created to be, how would you define physical wellness?
Well, I've come to believe and kind of been convinced over time that our bodies are just a reflection of what's going on inside. And that could be taken very hard, because there's a lot of things that are out of our control, and especially in the culture that we live, that really focuses on the photoshopped version or the social version that we put out there. But what I mean that your body is a reflection of what's going on inside is that our external body, our physical well-being, is always informing us, and we just can't brush it off. I mean, you started earlier with saying that that in faith circles there hasn't been that connection, or there hasn't been that focus, or we've lost that focus. And I think largely it's because they see the external as temporal, and when you're in a faith circle, you're focusing on the eternal. But if we don't focus on our physical bodies, we lose sight of how it could inform us on things that are internal, if that makes sense.
So what would be like the elements of our physical bodies that would be wise for us to pay attention to? So we've got like nutrition, for example, but what are the things that, if we're going to take responsibility for our physical wellness and wholeness, what are those elements?
If I'd break them down, I would just look at, how is your physical body at rest? Is it getting rest, first of all? And then how is your physical body in movement? And then how is your physical body in stress? Where there is weight on that body, where you're going through difficult challenges, whether it's you're on the treadmill, or whether you're climbing a hill, or whether you're carrying your 2 kids. I mean, how does the body move when there is stress upon it? How does it move just naturally? And then how does it rest? And those 3 things, movement, rest, movement, and stress, and those are probably the 3 key things that I would look at. Then lastly would be how I fuel it, but I'd really kind of focus on those 3 first.
Wow. Why do you focus on those 3 first and not the nutrition? Because, a lot of folks talk about how 80% of your wellness is going to be what you're putting into your body. Only 20% is your physical. So you may work out more, but if you're still eating the same crap, you're not losing weight, you're not gaining muscle, you're not at your peak. So why is the fuel the last part?
And 97.3% of statistics are made up on the spot. So
I didn't make that up. I've heard that.
No, I know. So, I mean, I've heard that all along too, and I'm sure there's truth to it. But the reason that I focus first on rest, movement, and stress is because the real question when people are asking to get healthy is, give me an excuse on why I can't do that. Give me a plan, a nutrition plan, a diet plan that is just not going to work for me. So I leave that later, because for later because I'm not going to give them something that most can't handle right now. And also inherently, I know that you're just looking for an excuse. And so I'm not going to give that to you right now. Sorry, move 4 minutes a day. And then you're like, whoa, I can do that. Now you engage someone into action. And then the fuel will come later.
That makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. Okay. So you've got a pretty powerful personal transformation story that has led you into study, that has led you into creating some business and work around this. So can you tell people what happened in your own life?
Yeah, well, in short, I had been married for about 3 years, and I just happened to get on a weight scale for no other reason than just get on a weight scale. And I noticed I had gained about 2 pounds a month for the last 3 years I had been married. So quick math, I'm about 36 pounds plus that I had gained, and I had not noticed it.
Wow.
And so for me, what hit me was that I was doing well in a lot of areas in my life. And in this one area, the physical domain, there was like no control. So for me personally, I felt that I was out of integrity with myself. How can I be disciplined in multiple domains, and in this one domain, there is no discipline? And what kind of in hindsight, what really was the motivating drive behind this was that my wife was pregnant with our first child. And so I wanted to be a fit dad, not a fat dad. And I wanted to, it was no longer about me, even though I had never saw myself as, fat or anything like that. I did know I wanted to be fit for my daughter. Yeah.
So then what happened?
So I tried many things, and the opposite happened. I would lose some weight, and then I'd gain it back with more. So the 36 pounds quickly turned into 60 plus pounds. And the reason I figured out why I kept on losing and gaining even more back was because my motivation was driven out of shame and guilt. I was kind of ashamed that I let myself go. And I was feeling a little guilty. And so I used that same kind of shame and guilt to try to drive me to lose the weight. And I had weight loss goals. I had accountability partners. I had nutrition plans. I had workout plans. And they would all work for me for about 30 days. And then it would slowly start slipping away. And that's just my own personal experience. What changed for me was when it stopped being about weight loss. And I said, I just want to be healthy. I want to have health gain. And it was no longer about what I was eating, and it was more about what was eating me. And I started doing the internal work of like the whys. And I set a far off goal. I said, by the time my daughter, who's not born yet, gets to kindergarten, I'm going to be a fit guy.
Wow. A 5-year goal.
5-year goal. And a 5-year plus, right?
Yeah.
Because she was still, my wife was like maybe 4 months pregnant. And that far off goal kind of released some of that stress. And I reached that goal within 8 months. So by the time that my daughter was born and 3-4 months, you could just see this transition. As I'm holding her, you could see as children grow, you could see you could see they change. She's
every
month
the chubs, or so. You're losing the chubs.
Yeah. And I was changing at the same rate. So that was the journey. Is that it became less about losing weight, and it became more about gaining health. It became less about what I eat and more about what was eating me. It became, it became less about what I thought I knew and more focused on what I was pretending to know. And
so you work with a lot of people now. You started, yes. Tell us about Payan, actually.
Yeah. So after I did that weight loss, I had this new body and I wanted to discover what I can do with it, and started doing some runs and some events and all this for the next 12 months, kind of alone, discovering all these new capabilities that I could do. But that soon was not as satisfying. I started to share it with others, started a small workout in the courtyard of where we lived. And then it moved over to a little trail right next to us. And it grew from 8 people to 50 people to 100 people to 300 people to now over 15,000 plus that have come through some of our workout programs. It started there in Irvine, eventually moved to Santa Ana. And now we are there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 a.m. Santa Ana Stadium. Over 30 trainers and leaders there that are helping people work out at no cost financially to them. Just show up and do something hard.
It's incredible. My husband was a part of the trail season. So somewhere between the 8 and 100, he started doing some Payan X workouts. And I actually just saw a Facebook memory in the last week or two of like a series of pictures that you posted of him, like flipping tires and doing some jumps. And part of what's so beautiful about your transformation story, I think, is how you've been really committed to doing it in community and inviting others into your transformation. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer says that God's word to us is almost always for the other. And there was a word that God's spoken to you over 10 years ago that since then you've been really committed to speak into others. And it's not a message of shame or guilt. It is something that is more freeing and more life-giving than that. Where do you think people are stuck in the ways that they engage and view their bodies?
Oh, phenomenal question. I think they're stuck with looking at themselves, and they think it's about me. So it's less, and we transition from less about me and more about we. And it's just this natural. I mean, I have plenty of insecurities, as many of us do. But I think we're stuck when we think that gaining physical fitness is the end goal. Or that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is when someone comes and they say, well, I have this, I'm glad they're very specific. I have this specific goal. I want to get abs. I want to run this faster mile. And I just kind of let them speak. And I say, well, you know what? Maybe this is not the place for you. Because, maybe you should just, invest in a Photoshop class and Photoshop them on. Because here we're about doing something hard.
We're going to do the work.
Physically. Yeah. And then transferring that to other areas of your life. And if you're not willing to transfer it to other areas of your life, then this is probably not going to fulfill your desire.
That's incredible. Do you find that people are like, stop it, this is actually for me, and they come back to you? Or do a lot of people go, okay, you're probably right, I'm just going to go invest in a Photoshop class? Maybe.
Yeah, I haven't had the latter happen. What I've had is a laughter of relief when I say something like that. And you almost feel like a weight was lifted off of them immediately. And they want to know more, and they want to be involved. And you have all these apprehensions when you're trying to make a change, whether it's physical, financial, emotional, spiritual, and you go to somebody that you may have already put on a pedestal because you've been seeing the social, and you're already nervous, and you take that big step, and you have probably devised all the responses to, what you think their questions are going to be. And then they throw you something like that is completely out of left field. And you're like, wait a minute. This is what I've always wanted. And you're there, you're open and ready.
You release them from those false desires, false expectations, and you call them into the truer, deeper, purer thing that they're actually looking for.
Wow, you say it much smarter than I did.
No, I did not.
I love it.
That was, I think that's really good. I just turned 40 last year. How old are you?
I'm 43.
Older than me., turning 40 was it felt like it was releasing a lot of stuff for me. But one of the things was my physical capacity is not what it has been. It's not as good as it has been. And there's been so many internal conversations that I've been working through that are limiting, that do feel like these weights and these pressures and the stuff that kind of prescribes me into how the world is talking about, like what I need to look like or how I need to feel, or what is good and healthy. And I think it's a very different approach that you have, and that you lead other people through. So to kind of just tease into this a little bit more, and this is for my benefit as much as probably for other people.
I love it.
Let's talk about the connection in our bodies, our mind, our spirit, around like how we are seeing ourselves. Because you're telling people like to stop looking at yourself. So what are you telling them to do instead?
So I tell them that you're going to discover that you're designed to do hard things, and you're going to discover that in community. And that is one of the first core beliefs or values that I try to lay that groundwork, is say, look, you are designed to do hard things, and you're not designed to do it alone. And so we're going to put some stress on you physically here, but you're going to have a community with you that's going to help you lift that tire, run those stairs, or whatever it may be that we're doing that day. But you're going to learn, and you're going to have an experience. You're going to experience your power, and you're going to experience it in community. It's not like I'm going to give you a workout routine. You're going to go do it at home, and you're going to do it by yourself, and you're going to experience that power, which is totally possible. But that's not Payan X. That's not our call.
So when people do this in relationship to each other, what opens up for them?
So first of all, their guards are down now. And for many, it's the first time that they've experienced power in, with others. They usually, many people have experienced power being taken away from them when they're in a community, in a circle. There's always the person that shines, and suddenly I'm not shining. There's the one that's doing better, and so largely their experiences with community haven't been the most positive ones. And even those that have been shining, they feel like, oh, I'm always the one that has to lead. And there's a stress of like, they expect me to do more. And so the relationships with community or group work or anything they've been involved in haven't always been, we'll say, the best and the most positive. So I'm not saying that happens all the time, but we aim for people to find a new relationship with power and community, and that they find power in community, and then they could take that wherever they go.
You said a little while ago too about how when you were starting your weight loss journey or your health gain journey.
Yeah.
That you noticed that there was a disconnect between the discipline and you doing well in so many areas of your life. And this was like the area that was sucking.
Yep.
And I think that for a lot of leaders in particular, that is true. Why do you think that is?
I can tell you why I think it was for me. It was a blind spot, and no one really told me. And I was doing well in other areas that I didn't really need to care about that area. And I was just not aware. It's not like I had a negative association to even my physical body where I was at, which, for many they do. But for me, I just did not, I wasn't aware. And when I became aware, I just could not ignore it. I could not ignore it. And if I ignored it, the problem would get worse. And maybe that's just part of my makeup, is if I see something I have to do something about it. And if I don't, I just start to get sick over time.
So like you weren't noticing your jeans were fitting tighter, you weren't sleeping as well, you had sleep apnea, you were none of that?
I would just buy new jeans and they'd be like designer ones. And it was just, I didn't have any sleep apnea. But I would lull myself with a couple extra In-N-Out burgers and that would just knock me out. I did not notice it, or I did not attribute my lack of sleep or just physical well-being to my nutrition and exercise habits. I would attribute it to, I'm just really stressed trying to get this project done. This season is just, and I would attribute it to other areas in my life. I'm traveling so much right now. I never connected it to like, you're not exercising and you're eating like crap.
Seriously. I mean, we are our best self-deceivers.
Yeah.
And I think that when it comes to our physical wellness, there's also, because there is so much shame and guilt around it, it's not like it's something that somebody's going to come up to you and be like, dude, Mark, you're packing it on and you are not well. That can feel so judgmental. Whereas other areas of our life, people feel more freedom or more of an openness to speak into our lives. Our physical feels like it's one of those things that like is off limits, and we're so good at deceiving ourselves. We can gain 60 pounds or, gain an autoimmune issue or, fill in the blank with something because we are ignoring it.
Yeah. And I had to like love where I was at too. So I had to love me. When I figured that out, I'm like, you know what? This is where I'm at. This is who I am. I'm still the same person. Actually, now I'm a better person because I'm aware. I'm aware of this. And so I actually, at that moment of awareness, I was more grateful for where I was at than before that. It's like if you're driving a car and it's missing a whole side and nobody tells you, and then you finally walk around and you're like, wow, this is an issue. You're a little upset that nobody told you, but you're grateful because now you can do something about it.
One of the things that our friend Hendry says a lot is that self-awareness produces the illusion of transformation. I use it in my coaching all the time. We train our coaches with that. So you becoming aware of it didn't actually change anything other than you're now aware that there's something that's broken. So correct. What are things that you did or what is stuff that you now help other people with so that there is transformation and not just an increase of awareness?
Yeah. Something else that Hendry says very pointedly is that change is not transformation, and that transformation is a shift in purpose. So that awareness piece allows for the shift. And so change is something that happens all the time. It's inevitable. We're going to change. Change is going to happen. Sometimes we're seduced to believe that change is transformation. And it's not till over time that we realize that it wasn't, because we're in the same spot a year to 10 years later. And we're like, but I've been changing so much. The awareness is that shift in your purpose. What happens after that is you need to take action. I'm grateful that I could see now and I could see what direction I need to go to. I need to take action. And for me, it was, let's start with 4 minutes a day. I'm going to go all out for 4 minutes a day. And I went all out for 4 minutes a day. And that 4 minutes has grown. And then it grown to sharing it with other folks. And even to this day, there is a 4-minute workout that starts every Payan X workout. And they are 20-second segments and 10 seconds of rest. But for 4 minutes, everyone does a group workout before they break out into groups and actually do whatever is prescribed for that day.
Oh my gosh. One of the things that just continues to draw me back to what you do with Payan X is that people are longing for a structure as well as longing for the community.
Yep.
And so you provide this beautiful structure and this kind of plan to work it out in, because I mean, there's 1,000 options out there, right? Like you can get a download workout videos. You can sign up for a gym. You can take all the classes, but we need the structure that's going to actually increase our capacity. So can you maybe just move us towards ending this episode with maybe 3 or 5 ways that leaders particularly can increase their capacity? Maybe it starts with that 4 minutes. Maybe there's some 4-minute thing if you want to give it to us or you want to give us other ideas. But how do we increase specifically our capacity?
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and give you the quick 4-minute is choose one movement. And once you got that movement down, whether it's, hey, I'm going to sit down on my chair, I'm going to sit down on a chair and I'm going to stand back up. So you're going to do that movement for 1 minute straight, and then take a little rest, 10 to 30 seconds, and do it again. Do that 4 times, 4 minutes, and stay committed to that. I know it sounds simple, but it's the commitment you pointed to today. It's a structure, the commitment, the consistency that starts to break other barriers in your life. Anyone can do 4 minutes. I had people come to the workout and they'd say, I love to do this, but my doctor said I can't do this, I can't do that. And they'd give me a whole lot of list. And I just say, well, does your doctor allow you to sit down? She's like, yes. Well, can you do that and stand back up? And just do that for the next 4 minutes. I'll be right back. So what people are always acting, even when you're asking about the 4 minutes, is you're really asking, like, please give me something so hard that I cannot fulfill it. Because now I have an excuse to be where I'm at.
And you shift blame. It's like Marc told Marc, I can't do that, what Marc said, so I can't do it. Instead of taking the personal responsibility, going back to the beginning of the conversation. What is within your ability for you to do? I'm not putting it on you. This is on me. These are my choices. These are the things that I have within my capacity and control.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so 4 minutes. What are a couple of other things that we can do to increase our capacity?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't share with you our mantra. We do hard things. Okay, so we is about a shared experience. Do is about taking action. Hard is about being uncomfortable. Is about avoiding the path of least resistance, which we are prone to. Once we learn something, we just continue just to avoid the path of least resistance. And things is about adapting. So in short, it's about embracing who you are. It's about adapting to what life brings at you. It's about discovering that you're designed to do hard things, and it's about executing, getting things done. All those are wrapped in our mantra of we do hard things. It's not me do hard things. It's not, me do sort of hard things. Or do this one thing. It's we do hard things. And that, if we could apply that not just to our physical lives, but to every other domain. Imagine when you invite a we into a problem you need help with. It becomes, when you invite somebody in, it's now like there's going to be power in this invitation. It's asking for help no longer becomes a weakness. It actually is a strength. And do is just like, well, what do I need to get done? What action do I need to take? And am I avoiding the hard path? Am I avoiding the hard conversation? Am I just going to what others have done that we think might work with me? Am I avoiding that path of least resistance? Am I just going the easy route? And how am I adapting? So the leaders of tomorrow are the ones that adapt the most. Things are going to change, you and the world around you.
I think that's really important because, which ties back into habits for me, because, in the 10 years that I've known you, we've, as a family, have gone from 0 to 3 kids. We moved cross country and back again. There's been multiple jobs. There's been hiring and firing and quitting involved. There's been starting a new company. Like, there's been a lot of change that has happened in the Diaz family, and in my life. And in all of those changes, it's the habits that I've had in place that have centered me, rooted me, anchored me, allowed me to move forward. And those have been like the life-saving things. But on the other side of that same coin, I think that for a lot of leaders, myself included, I would say I do hard things all the freaking time. Mm-hmm. And in seasons, moments, everyday decisions, but longer periods of time, I have opted out so many times of not doing the hard things physically because I go, Marc, I do hard things every day. I parent 3 kids with significant trauma. That's freaking hard. I've started a company this year. That is freaking hard. I am married to a man who is so different from me, and sometimes marriage is hard. So those excuses again can get really layered and heavy and intense. And I think that there's a lot of folks that are like me in that way, right? Yep. Where we do hard things, but it hasn't translated in the physical. But I also know that I just started a week and a half ago training for another half marathon. I haven't run a half in 6 years. The last half I ran, Asher was 1 year old. So I did a really hard thing when my babies were tiny. I ran 2. Yep. And but I haven't for the last 6 years. And I've got a whole list of reasons why. But I want to I want to live a life and have a leadership capacity that my body carries me through that it empowers me, that there's strength, that there's a centeredness, that I am caring for her and honoring her. And so, yeah, for those that maybe would share a bit of a story similar to mine, that they're going, dude, I do hard things all freaking day. Don't tell me to do a hard thing with my body. What would you say to us?
I would say I'm not asking you to do a hard thing with your body. Your body is asking you to be your full self. You're leaving so much on the table. You can't speak about wholeness and just take out a slice and say, well, the rest of it is really good. At the end of the day, the hard truth is that you're out of integrity with yourself. And you gotta be aware. And it's okay if you decide a year or 2 or 10 years later, but just know that you're out of integrity with yourself when you don't include your whole self in your leadership. And hard is relative. So for you, a half marathon, for someone else, it may be half a block would reach that same level of hard. So I'm not prescribing anyone to do 100 miles.
You're like, April, I ran a half marathon this morning.
Yeah, I'm not prescribing that to anyone, but I am prescribing that you stop pretending not to know that you're out of integrity with yourself. And it could just be, I am going for a walk. I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. I'm going to do some joint circles on my ankle. I'm going to get up and sit down on a chair 10 times. Movement. We started with, how's your rest? How's your movement? And how are you under stress? And I know it's controversial, but I'm wholeheartedly speaking this all out of love. And it has nothing to do with the way that you look. It's more on, are you actualizing who you are? Are you being your full self? That includes this temporal body too, right? We can criticize face circles for not talking about it, but we can't if we're not doing it in our own lives.
Well, there's a mic drop. Thank you for that. Dang. Yeah. I asked and I wanted it, but that's some truth. Yeah. That's some truth. And I think because I know that you are a person of love, you say all of this in love, not in judgment, not in guilt. That stuff doesn't work. My hope and prayer is that as folks are listening, they're going, yes, I'm going to come into alignment and I'm going to make some shifts. So, all right, let's wrap up this conversation. I've got 3 questions that I'm asking every guest. They tie into what we're all about, at Azer & Co. And my first question to you is this. Real quick, gut response, 60 seconds or less. How can women be activated towards wholeness in their life and leadership?
Stepping into who they are. And embracing all of themselves. Sometimes they're in roles that are typically filled with other genders and almost seem to avoid, to drop out who they are and embrace what that particular role would normally do. And they adopt characteristics and behaviors that are maybe not their full selves. So I would just say, embrace who you are. You're there because you were chosen to be. Embrace it.
What's the number one practice that leads you toward wholeness?
Being able to be still and meditate from 1 to 5 minutes every morning. So the opposite of movement.
It's moving your soul towards centeredness. That's what it's the movement. Yeah. Last question is, how can men like you, how can you use your privilege to partner better with women like us?
That's a really tough one because I think it's first of all, being aware. Like when you ask that question, I'm like, privilege, male privilege. Oh, I probably haven't seen that side of the car in my own life that's missing. So I need to be aware of it. So I think the first way we can partner with is to be aware of it and to learn more and just to lean in and know that there are some preferences that I get because of my gender. And in the faith circles, and I've dealt with this most of my life. I'll be straight up right here. I've dealt with this most of my life. They're like, you got so much favor on your life, Marc. And sometimes that privilege is labeled as favor, and yes, I do. This is all favor. So I got to be aware of the favor of my life, because favor should bless everyone in my circle and not just me, because maybe it's not favor. Maybe it's something else.
That is one of the best responses I've ever had to that question. So thank you for that vulnerability and that authenticity that could make a difference for a lot of men that would listen to this. Where can people find you on the World Wide Web if they so desire?
At MarcPayan, at Marc Payan, and that's about it. Just type in my name and that will show up.
Do you have stuff for PayanX?
Yep. PAYANX, and it will show up as well.
Awesome. Okay. We will link all of that to the show notes. And thank you so much. I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for your life, for your leadership, for the ways that you, for a decade now, have been pushing, leading, prompting, modeling what it looks like to have this foundation area of our life, our physical bodies in alignment with every other part of it. You continue to push me, and I'm grateful for that. I need it. And keep rocking it, and don't hold back. We need you. Thank you.
I appreciate you, April, and everything that you're doing in the space and making us aware of that it's important to lead our own lives.
Thanks for listening today, friends. You can listen to previous episodes on our website, azerandco.com/podcast. If you're finding value, please become a patron with the link in the show notes. It costs real dollars and loads of time to produce this podcast, and your dollars make it possible for us to keep doing this work. If you're not already, take a second to subscribe so you won't miss a thing. It also means a ton when you tap your screen to rate, review, and share this podcast with others. All of that allows us to continue sharing voices from the fringe for the betterment of our world. Peace.
Hey friends, do you love podcasts like the one you just listened to? Have you ever dreamed about having your own? Well, my name is Michael and I work for TruthWork Media. We believe that everyone has a story and every story deserves a podcast. Let us help you get started. Look us up at www.truthworkmedia.com, fill out our questionnaire, and I'll schedule a time to talk. It's really that easy. Truthwork Media. Everyone has a story. Yours needs a podcast.